Thank you for your attention. I want to say some thanks. The first thanks I want to say was we were a bit between a rock and a hard place when it came to record doing a live stream for this session, and in fact the previous one. And I would like you to give a big hand, and thanks to Tina and James. Thank you very much, Tina and James. On behalf of us all, I would also like to extend my thanks to the Whanganui District Council team, who have been so great to deal with and on both sessions. They really have been marvellous, and when we came along we wanted 18 chairs on here for the first time, and that happened almost instantly, and I'm very grateful. Thank you, Whanganui District Council. Also I'd like to thank the Barracks Sports Bar in St Hiltree. They very generously let us use their premises for all our normal meetings. So very big thanks to the Barracks Sports Bar in Hill Street. And now we move to the Horizons candidates, and joining us tonight, but not originally on the program, but we're delighted to have you, is Elijah and Soraya. So let's start with how organised I am. First person to speak tonight is Alan Taylor. A big hand for Alan.
Kia ora. I'm Alan Taylor, and you can see my profile as Pākehā we get in the book. Horizons extends from Tauranui to Ote, from Waitota to Akatio. It homes 250,000 people in a landscape of diverse types, from the mountains to the sea. The regional council is responsible for river management, flood control, for land management, for freshwater initiatives, biodiversity and biosecurity. On top of that, it's responsible for regional public transport, for regional planning, for environmental education, regional environmental data, monitoring and consenting, as well as coordinating civil defence across all 7 PAs that are involved. So it's very large and very complex. And its work is very wide-ranging and very complex, which is why it's critical that you send back to Horizons a councillor who's had some experience there along with a new person. Because if Whanganui, sitting out on the edge, is not represented by someone with some experience at Horizons, I think it will suffer. So you can see the environment is at the centre of everything Horizons does in providing a thriving economy through a very vibrant environment for everyone, for all of you, from the eldest amongst us to the unborn babies in the mummy's tummies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Big hand for Phil Haynes.
Can we see that?
which I think is great, and I think they're right.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm here because I was asked to stand, and I think I'm able to commit to the time. But first of all, I'd like to, if you can, download and go online and find my flyer and my manifesto, because it's reasonably detailed, so if you've got a smartphone you can put your camera on that. So why me and why now? Well, apart from being asked, secondly, you're not just voting for me. I'd love you to vote for me, and I'll tell you why in a minute. What you're actually voting for is a team of 2 councillors. The councillors to represent you together. If the 2 councillors don't collaborate and work together, you don't get what you need. And I think that's possibly one of the issues that we've had in the past. I've met Alan quite a few times, we've had some good discussions. I think we're actually quite overlapped in a lot of the things we think about and decide on. So personally, I think that would work well. I haven't met the other guys that much, but from what I've researched so far, I think we've made a good team as well. I've got lots of experience in public consultation with councils and with central government, so much so that it makes me prefer local councils and regional councils to central government. The priorities I really want to get across and get involved in is changing the investments that Horizons have, which are not working and not providing local stimulus. Transport and making sure it's available and accessible for everybody, and the environment. Because tomorrow is how the environment is how we're fed tomorrow. I grew up on a farm, so I understand those balances. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Our next speaker will be Martin Visser. Welcome, Martin.
Hi, kia ora koutou. I'm Martin Visser and I'm standing for the Horizons Regional Council. I'm a Pūtiki boy, brought up on a small farm with my 5 siblings. With an honours management degree and decades of local and international experience with Carter Harvey, Fletcher Challenge and Merit Express in Bank of New Zealand, I believe I offer a unique blend of skills in marketing, research, stats, finance, investment advice and strategic planning, complemented by local government experience as a councillor, RMA commissioner and consultant. Former Mayor Nick May described my contribution in just 1 term as immense. I'm committed to applying these skills to the big challenges facing the Horizons, bringing breadth, balance and an evidence-based approach. Horizons' biggest challenge? You read the 10-year plan and what stands out is the challenge of improving water quality, flood protection and climate change response for at least the next 30 years. To put it into perspective, Horizons has 35,000 kilometres of rivers and streams. That's 22 times up and down the length of New Zealand, and 240 lakes to take care of, along with a host of other things, which Alan described before. Now, regardless of what the current government says, regional government of some form is still necessary. Finding and funding an appropriate government structure will likely have to be settled in the next 3-year period. In the meantime, New Zealand's green image comes under more pressure, not fatally, but the bar is rising. Our image is under real strain due to low freshwater quality, agricultural methane, biodiversity loss, and public uncertainty. Overseas buyers increasingly demand audited sustainability performance rather than slogans, so the value of the image depends on measurable delivery. We, our farmers, Horizons and government need to rise to the environmental challenge to rebuild New Zealand's image. Without that competitive advantage, we have much we can or no points of difference, and that everyone is marketing 101. That's how we become wealthier, healthier, and more resilient and sustainable as a nation, aside from, of course, helping the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Martin. Ben, please. Big welcome for Ben.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Fraser. I'm a farmer and I farm on the Raki Māori road just up the way. And as the crow flies, it's not that long. I've been on the governance boards I've been on many governance boards. I'm currently on the National Farmers Governance Board and the National Meat and Wool Board. But I want to reiterate, I am not just a farmer. I'm a business owner. I have an environmental consultancy with a friend of mine, and for the past 3 years we've been helping people minimise their impacts on the environment and navigate resource consents. I have a science background. I went and studied chemistry, water resource management, and I started getting into planning before I got my role, working as a freshwater advisor for Horizons Regional Council. In my time working for Horizons Regional Council, I looked after the Whanganui catchment, and I looked after the upper Whanganui catchment. And that involved a lot of fencing and planning and mitigations and effects and improving water quality for both of those rivers. Some of the other experience that I've had, why choose me? Well, I really stand for three things, right? I stand for fiscal responsibility for regional council. You know, if you were to think about being, part of a club and you didn't like it, or you didn't like the way they were using your money, you would leave. Legally, with Horizons, you can't. So you've got to make sure that the people who are representing your rates and are sitting around the decision-making table are effective and affordable with the money that they have available. Secondly, transparent and accountable governance. There's a lot of stuff going through under the radar that not everyone is available or knows it's happening until the very last minute. I think it's essential that there is that open communication with everyone in the public, and they know what's going on and what's involved. And lastly, it's looking after our environment. And no, it's not in that order. Flood protection is key. We've got to look after our assets and protect our homes and buildings, but also we've got to make sure that our rivers, biodiversity, everything is thriving. So if you like the sound of that, vote in Fraser.
Thank you, Ben. I'm delighted to announce the next two candidates to speak who are standing for the Maori ward. A big welcome for Elijah Pui.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Elijah Pui, and I'm seeking your support for Horizons Regional Council in the Raki Māori ward. Thanks to the Whanganui residents and ratepayers for the invitation to be here. Well, here's the invitation to be here. Tēnā koutou. I'm from Raitahi, which is about an hour that way. It's nestled in the heart of the Vanuatu Whanganui. I'm proudly connected to Ngāti Rangi and Ngāti Unuku, and I am ka mai waka at Raitahi Marae. My tūranga wawa, my place to stand in my spiritual home. I'm experienced. I've worked in Wellington and Parliament. I've returned home in 2018 to work for my iwi and community. I've served on whātumuni boards and school boards and community boards, and now serve as the Chief Executive of a Māori health organisation. I've also served and had the privilege of serving on Ratepayers District Council from 2019. I'm ready to combine local government knowledge with a fresh vision for Horizons. Firstly, kaitiakitanga in action. True guardianship of our taiao, our environment, demands more than mere promises or political posturing. Now is the time for wise, future-focused decisions shaped by the needs of our grandkids. Not short-term fixes, but enduring choices that safeguard the taiao for generations to come. Climate change is real, and it's a challenge for everyone to accept. It touches every corner of every person's lives. Both farmers and community have already demonstrated real leadership for our climate, and together we must build on this foundation. We need to focus on economic growth. A thriving economy means more jobs, stronger local business, and greater resilience across our region. And I'm committed to innovative solutions that foster sustainable development, but not at the cost of our environment. And finally, we have to return to the basics and get more for our rates. We all know that rates at the District Council and Regional Council are going up, but it seems like the levels of service aren't necessarily commensurate with those rises. So let's do best by getting better value from our rates. I'm back, I'm ready, I've got the experience, and I'm ready to get the job done. Let's get to work together and vote Elijah Pui for Horizons Regional Council.
Very much, Elijah. And our final speaker with the Horizons candidates. Big hand for Soraya Peke-Mason.
Te tuatahi, taupu te waka, waimiti I tēnā pia, ngā uri o te awa tūpua o Whanganui, ngā hoa, ranga tēnā mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. I am driven by the dreams and aspirations of our people who have gone before us. I am driven by the dreams and aspirations of our rangatahi, our mokopuna, our tamariki of today and tomorrow. For those that don't know me, I grew up on the iron sands of the Castle Cliff Beach. My name is Soraya Peke-Mason. I am self-employed and I sit on the Whanganui Regional Health Network. I come from a political and a business background, having worked across the Raki Māori for almost the last 20 years. I've served on the Whanganui District Council for 12 years and spent time in Parliament as a list MP. I'm a former foundation member of the Iwi Māori Partnership Board, Te Mātuku, and a former WRRA Commissioner. The big issues that front us today are around how we respond to the ongoing changes to legislation that will impact on us, on our communities, on our marae, on our hapu. The impact of climate change on our environment, civil defence and flood mitigation, a public transport system that is efficient, that connects the region and beyond, the affordability of rates as many of us out there are struggling to survive. There are many hapu and iwi in the Horizons region catchment that have their own tile environment management and or catchment plans. We can draw on them to work together to achieve mutually beneficial outcomes and solutions. I will champion Te Pūwaha, the significant collaborative project at the Castle Cliff Wharf, and ensure that Te Heke Ngā Huru ki Te Awa Tūpua strategy is at the forefront of what we think and what we do. After a break from politics, I am back with conviction, resilient, reliant, reliable and present. Te mea tuatahi, toitu te tiriti means bringing together your local intellectual knowledge, our mātauranga Māori, so that we can thrive and build a future together. Kia ora koutou.
We now move to question times, and the first question will be answered by Alan Taylor and Martin Visser. Whanganui makes up the largest land area of the Horizons region. Do you believe the district is fairly represented on council? If not, what needs to change?
It is fairly represented. We agree as councillors when we are sworn in on Horizons to represent the region but bring your district flavour. It is not partisan, although I must admit that I have got quite emotional at times in voting for things that will benefit Whanganui. But I would say that, to reiterate, the representation is fair. It cannot change in the sense that it would disadvantage others because it's population-based, except for the Māori wards, which we welcome.
Right. Powers North has 4 councillors. We have 2. Manawatu, Rangatiki have 2. Horowhenua have 2. And all the other constituencies have 1. And when you look at it on a population basis, that seems about right. Maybe land area is another means of determining what the representation should be, but I think it really needs to go by population, and I think it's fair as it is. If we just need to get our requirements fairly and clearly communicated to Horizons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. The next question will be answered by Ben and Phil, please. The question is, if central government dissolved the regional councils and merged them with local councils, would this help or harm the work that Horizons does, and why?
The 2 councils do cover quite specific specialities and width of skills. I think there could be some savings nominally. You might have a slightly narrower selection of councillors, perhaps, some of the management structure. But at the end of the day, protecting the hour, for example, probably would cost the same. So I feel it's a central government distraction, designed to create a little bit of debate and topic and a little bit of punching down.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Right. So that's a really interesting question in the sense of what is the purpose between both district and regional council, when they provide two completely different roles. But that's also due to the setup and the roles in which they were given. So when you look at, say, public transport, for example, I'm always asked the question of why is it run by a regional council and not the district council? Well, the premise was that you could have inter-regional public transport. And you could argue the same with water services. You know, you've got, I go to someone's house or I've been to someone's house and they say, hey, there's been a problem with my drain. Oh, well, that's a Whanganui District Council problem. Oh no, but that's a Horizons problem. And you get put through this loop of who's this and who's isn't. And if they were merged and they were together, then you'd probably solve a lot of those issues out. My pet peeve is when there's a violation by one and you're being sued by the other. So for example, if there was a discharge by, say, another council, not Whanganui, that was then taken to court by Horizons Regional Council. We're then having a battle between two ratepayer-funded organisations, and the only people winning there are the lawyers.
Move to the next question, and the question will be answered by Martin Visser and Soraya Peke-Mason. Do you believe that Horizon should be involved in duplicating road safety advice, engaging in extensive advertising when this is already covered by NZTA and the police?
Well, I understand that the three groups, the three parties all work in unison, and that Horizons concentrates on issues relating to road safety, particular to the Horizon region. There is room for overlap. There is with so many of these activities. They don't just stop at the border between Whanganui and the rest of the Horizons region, for example, or Whanganui rural and Whanganui urban. There is room for collaboration with all of these things. The different parties have different perspectives and expertise. Thank you.
I think that with regards to transport, there is a lot of value and sense in collaborating. Absolutely, given the Horizons has that responsibility of providing public transport services across the region. So it does make sense in that perspective to be working collaboratively around safety. I mean.
Thank you, Soraya. Next question will be answered by Elijah and Ben. Given that the government is considering disestablishing regional councils, will you vote against the Horizons building a new office in Palmerston North?
Good question.
So just to be clear on the first part of your question around regional councils, I think whatever makes common sense and is going to have less burden on the ratepayer, then I'm all for that. And if it means that we have to have courageous conversations about bringing councils together, district and regional, let's just do it. Otherwise we're kicking the can down the road. Regarding the offices in Palmerston North, again, I understand the need to bring staff under the same roof, but I don't see an unnecessary need to purchase or even build substantively over-the-top office just to bring people together. I don't quite understand it, but it's an operational thing that the Chief Executive is responsible for. But again, unnecessary expenditure on ratepayers is not at all what I'm standing for.
Thank you.
Will yes suffice? If I vote yes to not have the building, will that suffice? No, but I completely agree with what Elijah was saying here. And if you take a step back and you look at the need or the want of the new building, it comes down to being able to staff safe due to earthquake risk, right? But the scope and the time frame on which they determined that came down to, as I understand it, a council decision. And not saying that staff shouldn't have a safe place to stay, but they also have currently other places that they can stay. Right next door is a building that's currently being used, and part of it is also being rented out. Not that. And again, I don't want to dip into operationals here, but why not use the space that you already have, or make better use of the spaces that you have? So, in terms of what that means for Whanganui, a new building, especially in the uncertainty and questioning whether or not we will have the horizons, well, you're just going to siphon off rates to go to Palmerston North. So, no.
If you don't mind, Martin, I think we'll keep going because we've got quite a big program to complete. Next question to be answered by Alan and Phil. Horizons employ over 400 staff across the region, with more than half in Palmerston North. Do you believe Horizons is an efficient user of its human resources? Alan.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
I'll say the question again, Alan. Horizons employs over 400 people across the region, with more than half in Palmerston North. Do you believe Horizons is an efficient user of its human resources?
Just a minor correction, our staffing numbers are just over 300 full-time equivalents. It is an efficient user. If you look at the rest of all of New Zealand's regional councils, our staffing numbers in relation to rates paid, services delivered, sit right in the middle. We're rather thin in some areas in science. There's no operational area where I can see excess staff, and I know staff who working in catchment operations who have to stay up all night when there's a climate event taking place, a rain event, and don't get any sleep at all. It would be nice for them to have extra staff to handle that.
Thank you.
Two things I think we should remember is Alan's right. In comparison to other regional councils, Horizons actually does quite a good representation of using money in terms of resource-wise. But secondly, going forward, I think the bigger question is, what are the 300 going to do? Because we've got the massive change to the Resource Management Act, which is going to change a lot of things. The structure will need to change to deal with that. And certainly it seems like Horizons could get better at that, especially from a rural perspective.
Thank you very much, Phil. Our next question will be asked by Martin and Soraya. I think we should say that all of these questions at this stage have been submitted independently of ourselves. Where do you personally draw the line between raising rates and cutting services? How do you balance affordability for the Whanganui ratepayers and the need to deliver services? Thank you.
I've tried to, and looking at the 10-year plan, to see what Whanganui ratepayers are paying. It's not easily determined through looking at the 10-year plan as to what the regional breakdown is. My efforts thus far have shown that Whanganui has around an average of 650 per household, and it's probably the lowest in the Horizons region. And Horowhenua at average $870 is highest. But that includes a lot of work on Lake Horowhenua at around 10 million. There seems to be a Whanganui perception that it's hard done by, but my initial impression is that you get what you pay for. the problem is that people don't know what it is that they're getting before they raise. They can't see the value, and that's something for Horizons to try and address.
Could I have the question again, please?
Okay, next question.
It's my turn. Can I have the question again, please? It's a very long question, and it's been a while since I heard this.
Oh, sorry, the question's been read again.
Yes,
Certainly,
please.
sir. Your wish is my command. Where do you personally draw the line between raising rates and cutting services? How do you balance affordability for the Whanganui ratepayers with the delivery of services?
First of all, I'd be wanting to stick to the core business, prioritise the priorities that need to have that focus and that investment. But sticking to core business, I'd be looking at the question around amalgamation, dare I say it, if I can. The reason why I support the discussion around the potential amalgamation of regional and district or city councils is because of efficiencies more than anything else. I see value in having that discussion. But at the end of the day, it's kia koto. It's not a new question, but I have heard recently that this government has raised it. So that is where I would look at how we could have some efficiencies and cut cuts to that.
The next question I'm going to combine, it's two questions. I'm going to combine it into one. And it'll be answered by Alan Taylor and Ben Fraser. How effective and practical is the Horizons of One plan? Second part, protecting the land is a core role of Horizons. What is your top priority for environmental protection in the Whanganui District?
The One Plan's currently going through some chapter reviews, but they have unfortunately, in many respects, been put on hold by the government and held in abeyance until they sort out what they're going to do with the Resource Management Act. The One Plan served its purpose, but it has got problems, and that's why it's being reviewed and aspects of it being addressed. The second part of the question was the most important.
The second part of the protection was protecting the land is a core role of Horizons. How would your top priority for environmental protection in Whanganui District?
The hour.
That answers that question. Thank you.
I have to agree with Alan on the fact that the One Plan is very clunky and no discrepancies from what he was saying there. In terms of the second part of the question, it is water. You know, water is life, right? Everything is water. You can't grow food, you can't have animals, you can't live without looking after water. But it's key to remember that everything essentially affects water. Land affects water. We affect water. Water affects us. And so I think in terms of prioritising for water management, you know, you need to involve the people who are on the ground, locally we catchment groups and guys who are there doing the work, because they are the ones that have the biggest influence in how water is being looked after and managed. So if you're able to promote ground up through from things like catchment groups, getting guys on board who are actually going to do the work, then that's how you get your biggest change.
Thank you. Should rural and urban Whanganui ratepayers be paying the same for the services that are not delivered evenly across the Horizon region? If not, how would you rebalance this? Elijah and Martin, please.
This is a debate that I had as a district councillor around farmers' use of libraries or rural residents' use of recycling or rubbish collection. I think if, in an ideal world, we would pay for what we use, but I think local government is so discombobulated that getting to a system where user pays, rates are fair, it's not so extravagant as it currently is, I think is wishful thinking. I'd like the whole local government sector to go under a little bit of a review to understand what is the priority for our communities, what, if anything, should local government be providing to its communities and who should be paying for it. So I don't want to get into, rural residents should pay for this and urban should pay for that, but I definitely think we're onto something. I just need to see some more political will in Wellington for that to occur.
Urban rates for Whanganui typically range from about $280 to $500 per year, while rural rates for over 1,000 hectares can be over 4,800. And it reflects the services that the rural versus urban areas are getting. Horizons rates tend to be more targeted than those for Whanganui District Council. 50% of the rates burden is through targeted rates. Targeted rates like that go to beneficiaries of, for example, stock banks and drainage schemes. I think the rates as they stand are pretty well spread in terms of the services that both rural and urban get. And it's reflected in the wide disparity in rates between the groups.
Our last prepared question, it will be answered by Alan Taylor and I think probably Soraya, please. So the question is, do you support the idea of moving to a unitary council model for this region, where local and regional functions are merged into one council? Why or why not? Soraya.
So I think that I had touched on that earlier, Whānau. It's not a new subject. It's been around for quite a while, but I think that it is time to have that wider discussion around looking at the efficiencies in terms of amalgamation, particularly around administration and staff. There is a lot of cost savings there. It definitely does need the conversation, but at the end of the day, it's up to us, it's up to you as people within our communities to have that discussion and that debate and give everything that consideration, particularly around those efficiencies by amalgamating and having a unitary authority.
Alan.
Let's be clear that we don't need to be too concerned about what has emanated from Wellington. That's come from the mouth of one senior minister of a coalition government. What I would say is that, yes, I did think that a few years back, but having been to Horizons and having been on the district council for 2 terms, I now think that's not the best thing to do. The difference between what the two organisations do is very, very wide, although we can cooperate, obviously, on important aspects of it. Unless a unitary authority takes in 3 or 4 territorials, not just Whanganui alone, all you will see is massive increase in costs, because you will have to put managers for every operation that Horizons now does into every district or city council if it became unitary.
So I just have a bit of tally, and I've realised that Elijah and Phil, you both haven't had as much airtime as the others. So what I'd like you to do is invite you to do a minute and talk about a topic that there's been a question that has been asked that we'd like to speak to.
Thank you, Elijah. He's an amazing referee.
Thank you very much. I think I'm a common sense person, right? And so if there are decisions that need to be made that make sense, then let's do that. But if there are decisions that are being put on the table that just don't make sense to the Joe Blogs person right ahead, then I'm not going to support that. talking about, I've talked about already, but around amalgamation. If it makes sense, then let's do it. If it means less rates or cheaper rates, then let's do it. Let's do it. But I think any councillor, or candidate is reading the tea leaves on amalgamation, is reading the tea leaves on what rates will be in the next year. Some of the candidates across district and regional have been committing to reducing rates. Now, Bear said it before, if you're going to reduce rates now, you're just going to make them more expensive for our mokopuna, for the next generation. So common sense decisions, and I don't want to sound like Winston, but common sense makes sense to me. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. We'll have two, maybe three questions.
Hang on, Warren.
Oh, sorry, Phil. I didn't mean to cut you short.
That's okay. Well, 100% agree with you on that. It's easy to think that there's not so much common sense around in councils. My experience of councils is that there actually is, but sometimes the priorities are a little bit in the wrong order. In terms of, does that mean, the costs are too high and rates are too high? Well, there are other issues that cause that. Horizon spend $180 million a year, and about $100 million of it comes from rates. So where does the others come from? The investments they have are not working, and if they worked 5% harder, that would be $5 million off the rates bit, so we go from 100 to 95. For the average property, that would take us from $600 a property to $540 a property. Or we could continue and get those priorities better and still spend the $600 without having to increase the rates. So there are other issues, and rates and performance is not one. I would like to say environmental biggest thing, of course it's the air, it's the water. It will kill us, and it probably is in critical condition.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now have time for two questions from the floor. If you'd like to ask one of the Horizons candidates a question, would you please raise your hand? Phil.
Hello, mates. I've got a question. There's 4 U's there stand for general seats, and 2 here stand for Māori seats. Question is, I don't see the names here on Māori seats, but how many is standing for Māori seats, and how many seats are there? 4 standing for 1 seat. I just want to say that so it's out live, so those people out there who don't know what's cooking, that's all.
So what was your question, Phil?
Question is, there's 4 standing for 1 seat on the Māori board on Horizons, right? Yeah. That's all I wanted to say.
So it's
A lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
That's good. Has anyone got a question? For the candidates?
Yeah, I had up here.
Here we go, up here. Thank you.
Colin Anderson. Historically, Horizons, or its predecessors, catchment boards, undertook flood protection works and charged the cost to those properties that benefit from it. That's the properties next to the river. Do you think it is right that properties such as those on St John's Hill, Bastia Hill or Jerry Hill are being charged for a portion of the cost of the case of the Whanganui River, yet do receive no benefit?
It's a long question for you to repeat.
Should properties who are nowhere near the river pay for the flood protection works that are done on that river?
Who would like to answer that? 2 candidates.
I personally don't think you can make our user pays proposition. I think it is a great example of an asset and a cost and an expense and an activity and a responsibility that is shared by everybody. So I think it's kind of right that it's shared by the whole population. Whether that is right to be apportioned by property is a different matter. Maybe there is a different way, and that the whole population is regarded for something like that.
But does that not come back to the fact that people have a choice whether they wish to live beside the river or away from the river.
I think Martin, quickly please Martin, if you would please.
Well, as I said before, those routes aren't targeted. It doesn't mean that you on St John still are not getting a portion of your rates that relate to stoppings, etc. But where does your, just simply because you're not on the river and your property doesn't come under danger, does it mean that you should not share in the benefits of having the hour come through? It's not that cut and dry. It really isn't. They target the rates.
Thank you, Martin. I know I'm not supposed to, but I would have answered that question. If there was a huge flood and all the roads down by the river are closed, would that affect the people on the hill? So we have time for one more question up the back there, please. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please, given the river itself promotes people a place to be the best voice for its restoration, it's been great thus far, would someone like to answer what are the proactive initiatives do you believe would most effectively strengthen the health and resilience of our catchments, be it Whanganui or Mayoral, given we face, and as Alan has said, frequent and intense weather events? So what are the proactive initiatives do you believe will help strengthen the health and resilience of our catchments in Whanganui and Mayoral?
So Elijah?
Kia ora. So, yes, she is right. In the Horizons Law here in the Raki Māori ward, there are two major river catchments, Te Wairotika, Whanaihu, and Te Aotearoa, the Whanganui River. Now, both of those river catchments have treaty settlements contained within them. Within those treaty settlements are two really key concepts that relate to the health and well-being of both of those rivers. Now, those concepts, those kaupapa, those settlements require Horizons to get on board, and to this day, they haven't quite come to grasp that concept. Now, Ngāti and Whanganui both exist to promote the health and well-being of those two rivers. The health and well-being of rivers is good for everyone, and whatever we're doing to promote the health and well-being of rivers, we should support that, wherever you might be. We just have to be brave and do it.
Oh, would you like to answer that as well, please?
I'm sorry, no. Feel free to go. It's me, Soraya.
Yeah, I absolutely support what Elijah is sharing with us today. There are a lot of, there has been, I want to acknowledge that, a lot of work already done between Hapu, Iwi, our private enterprise, as well as the catchment groups, through the entire management plans. But what's really important is that ongoing discussion, understanding that Māori worldview, those values that we stand on, to help guide us through and understand and share what solutions that we can work together on as a collective. And a good example of that would be, to me, is Te Pūaha. We've got a collaboration of private enterprise. We've got local hapu there. We've got the central as well as district government and local government involved in that particular project. So that I see the value from Kānui Maunga through Ki Tangaroa in terms of the outcomes of that particular project long term. Kia ora.
Thank you, Liz. I think we're up against the time. We'll move to one more question, please. Is there anyone? Yes, over there with his hand up. Thank you. This question will be answered by Alan and Ben.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my question already could be answered by anyone, actually. And I think it's a good example you've given. Why should, because we had a look to see how many were on Māori wards and how many weren't at the beginning, why should general roll voters support Māori wards in a referendum, and how will doing so benefit the whole community? Enoch could answer. Doesn't have to be.
Alan and Ben. Alan? Oh, Ben, sorry.
All right, boys.